Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we are going to be working on another vintage Star Wars vehicle, and that is the AT-ST. Now, quite a while back I actually did a video restoring a few of these AT-STs. I took a whole broken pile of them and rebuilt them, and what you see here is pretty much what I rebuilt in that video. I have added a few extra parts in that time. Most of those are 3D prints from Xanadu Prime, and I will talk more about those later. But in today's video I actually want to start customizing this toy because there's something I've always wanted to do, and that is to cut out the eye holes and replace those with actual flaps so you can see inside and see the pilot. So let's get on with the project. So here we have an AT-ST. This is one of the particularly battered ones that I rebuilt. It is made out of the remains of a load of AT-STs, and I just took the parts, worked them up, repaired them and put them together like this. You can see this one is all yellowed. It's got a fair amount of yellowing on the head, and the legs have really started to degrade. You can see these ones are going brown and they're actually giving off a fairly odd smell, but that's what happens with the plastic on these legs. They do tend to degrade. Sometimes it looks pretty nice though. I think on this one it does look pretty good. It looks like it's been walking around indoor a lot. But what I want to do, as I said, is add some flaps on here so you can actually see inside the head of this AT-ST, because at the moment the only way you can see inside is that tiny little hole there, and you can barely see who the pilot is. In fact, on this one it is Chewie, but really, can you see him in there? Not at all. Even if I lift the lid up, it's barely visible. You just get to see him through the front. So what I want to do is actually drill these out and then make some styrene replacements, maybe something that is slightly opened up so you just get to see a little bit more inside it, and that then may lead on to a future project, because I also think it would be quite nice to add some lights inside this so we get a bit of a glow out of it, and maybe even a glow out towards the gun part here. But the first thing to do is to sort out the eyes. So what I'm going to do with this one is take all of the sort of the extra pieces off, so we're just left with the main part of the head and this lower section, and then we can start drilling this out and see what sort of hole we can make. Because I've never done this before, it's going to be a sort of trial and error process as to see how easy it is to actually cut these out. If it works really well, I may end up doing a second one, because as you can see I have 3 of these busted up AT-STs. So let's get this toy apart and then we'll start drilling some holes and see what the plastic is like. Now that I've got this apart, I can start to see immediately we're going to have a few issues with it, because you can see there's this panel inside where there are a couple of stickers stuck to show sort of computer screens, and that's actually going to block the view to the figure. I can also see there is a post there behind that, which is what joins the 2 front parts of this toy together. So it's not going to be an easy thing to do, but I still think it's worth a try. Even if I just end up drilling some holes in here and making a hole so that we can have a flap that sticks up, I think that will look pretty good. It's just going to be a bit of trial and error, which is why I'm using this sort of very broken up one that I've got here. It doesn't matter if it goes wrong. I've actually probably got a spare one of these bodies somewhere. So yeah, I'm just going to have a go and see what happens. So yeah, let's get the drill out, and I'm basically going to drill a few holes around the edge of this to see what it looks like, and then I'll start cutting away with some knives and then shaping it just with some small files. So yeah, let's see what happens and see how far we get. So there we go, that is the first one drilled out, and I've just done a little bit of test filing on the top, seeing if I can square that up, and as you can see, that is really not looking too bad at all. You can just about see into the cockpit there, because that little panel is slightly sort of angled away, so you will be able to see the figure. In fact, if I get Chewbacca and put him in, you can actually see a little bit more of him through there. So by the time I've tidied the rest of this up, I don't think that's going to look too bad at all. The rest I will have to tidy up with a Dremel, because you can see that post that goes across. That is what holds these two parts together. In the end, I will most likely have to glue that. Maybe just a bit of plastic weld will hold that together. But for now, that is a good first test. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll drill out the second eye, and then I'm going to get my Dremel out and do all of the tidying up. But I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. It already makes a massive difference. Now that I've got both eyes cut out, so I can see what I've got to work with, and the overall effect is actually going to look pretty nice, I reckon. I did have a sort of rough idea in sort of my mind of how I would attach the eyes, but actually it turns out that that's not going to work. On one side you can see we've got a nice sort of gap behind the eye. On the other side there is the remains of a post, which is what sort of holds these two parts together. So that side's going to be a bit awkward. So I'm going to have to sort of redesign my attachment things, but I think I can get something that will work. So the next thing to do is actually just to make a prototype. I've got some offcuts here of the 1mm thick grey styrene sheet. It's not a very close colour grey to the grey plastic here, but it's going to work sort of nice enough to sort of get some prototypes made. In the end, I think I'll have to paint whatever I make to match this. So certainly on this one where it's yellowed so badly. But yeah, let's just make a prototype. And to do that, I'm literally just going to sit here and cut bits of plastic and bits of styrene and plastic weld them together until I've got something that works. I don't really see a better way of doing it. I could make something out of cardboard, but I think styrene sheet is going to be the quickest way of doing it. So I'm just going to make one eye and see what works. I can see on the side here they've got sort of indications of rivets, and for doing that they've just sort of lightly drilled in holes, and I think I can do the same on here to make it look like it's a riveted panel. On the original, obviously it's a sticker, but actually on the model that they use for filming, they've got little rivet marks. So yeah, I think I can do some of that, add some detail to it. So yeah, let's just get cutting and shaping, see what I can make. As a prototype goes, I'm actually very happy with how that's turned out. It looks exactly how I wanted. So we've got an eye that is slightly open, you can see inside, and it does fit reasonably well. It's not permanently attached, I can actually remove this, but yeah, I think that's going to work really nicely. You can see I've tried to put some details on the top of the panel there just by using a drill bit to drill in slightly just to make some little rivet marks that try and match these ones. That was done using a 2mm drill bit. I have a feeling they're a little bit too large, so I'm going to go for a smaller drill bit next time. Yeah, that is pretty good. So let me show you what I've made. It's basically a panel, which is the shape of the eye hole, but about 1mm bigger all the way round, into which I've drilled the little rivet holes. And then on the back, I have stuck another piece of styrene at a slight angle, which is just about wide enough to fit in this gap. In fact, it's a very tight fit, and that's the way that this is being held in. That piece of styrene only just pushes into there, and it's the sort of friction that holds it in place and keeps the eye open. Initially, when I did this, I only put one 1mm piece of styrene there, but it actually turns out you need a 2mm bit just to add a sort of an extra fixing to this 1mm panel. You can see I've sort of patched it over a couple of times just to make it work, but when I build the second one, I'm actually going to layer up 2 bits of this styrene to make a 2mm sheet and then stick it on there. And basically you can change the angle of the eye flap by changing the angle that you cut that edge there. So the steeper the angle, the more open the eye will be. I've also added a very thin strip of styrene just down this edge. You can see it's a 1mm by 1mm strip, and that is because the eye is slightly sunken back there, and it looks a bit odd when you put this in that it's not quite thick enough. So adding an extra 1mm thick strip down there just makes the eye look a little bit better, and actually means that you could possibly close this as well, and I might do a closed version. It's certainly going to have some sort of variations to it. So now I've got my prototype. Let's make another one. I'm actually going to make the other side's eye just to so I've got a matching pair, but these are still sort of in the prototype stages. But as I said, I think that is looking really pretty good, and by the time you get the second eye on, it's going to sort of finish the look of it. And in the end, I will paint these to match this sort of, it's yellowed grey plastic at the moment. They do stand out a bit. But as a first go, that is really good. And now I've got one that works, I can actually use this to cut a template for the other one, because it took a little while to get that shape right. So I'm just going to use that as a template to cut the next one. So let's make another one and see what it looks like with 2 eyes in. If it looks good enough, I'm going to make some proper versions and do these proper rivet holes, because yeah, I think those are just a bit too big. Although the rivet holes on the side are about the same size, I think it would just be nicer if they were a little bit more sort of delicately put in than the 2mm drill bit that I've used there. But yeah, that is really good for a first go. Let's make another. And there we go, that is the second one built and put in. And it does make a really big difference. I really do like how that is looking. As you can see, I've actually put more rivet holes in this one. I used a smaller drill bit, so this is a 1.5mm drill bit just to drill in some tiny little holes. And that is looking pretty nice. I'm undecided as to which one I prefer. So as it's late in the day, I'm going to sleep on it, and I'll come back to this tomorrow and make a final decision. But overall, I think that is looking really pretty good. They're fairly quick to make as well. The first one took a little bit longer just because I was sort of prototyping. This one only took about 10 minutes to make. So yeah, I can certainly knock out a few of these tomorrow and see which ones I like the look of. I'm going to do some with slightly steeper angles as well, so they're slightly more open. But yeah, that is working really well. Let's come back to this tomorrow.
toyannoi. That is incorrect. Try again.
It's now a day later and I've had time to sort of think about these things overnight, and I've actually decided that I like the one with the sort of slightly larger rivet holes. It makes it a bit more naive and sort of keeps it in line with what's done on the rest of this toy. I do like the smaller rivet holes, but it just looks too detailed to me, so I'm going to go for the sort of 6 rivet holes that I did on that very first one, and I've already started making those. I've just cut out 4 of the panels. I'm going to make 2 different versions. I'm going to make a version where they are open. I'm going to try and make them open a little bit more than this, so they're a little bit sort of steeper, so possibly something like that so you can really see inside. I'm also going to make a version where they are flush to the body, so I end up with 2 options. I can either have the flaps closed or them open fully like that. So let's get these made, and then I'll sort out painting them and trying to match the original colour of this ATST. And there we go, that's 2 sets of the eye covers made. These ones I've angled out as much as I can. I think that does work really pretty well. The angle is as steep as I can get it. If I try to make it any steeper, it starts to become really awkward to attach them, but I think that's going to work. And certainly if I try and put a light inside, we'll get a nice glow coming out of those. And then I've made these, which are slightly modified again. I sort of changed my plan as I was going. These are the ones that are going to fit flush to the front. So what I've done is I've actually added 2 bits of styrene on the back there so they clip in really firmly. So I can push these eyes in like that. I'll get the other one there and we'll push that in. And so we now have this sort of closed version again. So this is back to, I'm not going to say how it was originally, because originally the eyes were sunken, but it sort of gives you the same impression as the original eye holes. So yeah, those are pretty good. I'm very happy with how they have come out, but as you can see, they are still the wrong colour. So we will sort that out now. First thing I'm going to do is actually just give them a quick coat with a plastic primer spray paint. I've got some Tamiya plastic primer spray paint. So I'm just going to give them a quick coat. They will come back looking pretty much the same shade of grey as they are already, but it means that when I come to put my own paint on, it will stick really nicely. So let's give these a quick coat of paint, and then we'll get the acrylics out and see if we can match that slightly yellowed, slightly grey colour. As you can see, these are now painted and the grey is pretty much the same colour. So I'm now mixing up a colour which is going to match this sort of yellowed plastic look. So I've mixed white with a very tiny amount of black to get a sort of base grey, and then into that I've mixed this Vallejo model colour called beige, which is 70.917, and I've got a colour that's starting to look right. You can see it here on the right of my mixing pot, and it's just about the right sort of shade. So I'm going to give everything a coat of that, I'll let it dry, see if it sort of matches, and then I'll do another sort of top coat to fine tune the colour. Once all of that's dry, I'm then going to apply a clear Mr. Hobby satin coat over the top of it, which is just to give it the same sort of sheen as this original plastic. But I think that colour is going to match pretty well. So let's get these panels painted, and then we'll do the final fixings and see what it looks like. And here are the final panels. As you can see, they ended up looking really rather nice. I've got a sort of tone on them that's just about the right sort of shade. It's not quite as yellow on this side, but then the other side is about right. So I think they're going to look really nice once they're in place. And we can now actually start putting the ATST back together. And to do that, I'm going to be using some 3D replacement parts because I'm still missing quite a few pieces for this ATST. So you can see I've got some replacement sort of under shields. These come from Xanadu Prime. These are resin printed. You can get them in various colours. So we've got a light version there and a dark version there. They also do the entire top hatch. So this is the top panel with the hatch and the gun. You can buy all these bits separately, and they do fit really rather nicely, which is great because as you can see, this is one of the pieces that I had. This is an original piece, but it's rather broken. I'm also going to add some stickers to this. I've already started doing that. If I lift up this replacement top hatch, you can see I put some of the stickers inside, and for those I'm using stickers from Toy Hacks or from my own website. If you want to download the PDF file and print them yourselves, then head on over to toy-polloi.com. You can get that file for free. Or if you want pre-printed die cut versions, then head on over to the Toy Hacks website. I'll put a link to that in the description, and you can grab this version, which fits very nicely and saves you the hassle of having to cut everything out. I'm going to be using the Toy Hacks version today because adding stickers to any toy does make quite a big difference. So let's get this ATST put together and we'll see how the final thing looks. And here we go. Here is the finished ATST with the now open eyes, and I think it makes such a difference to the look of this toy. Obviously this has been built on a very scrappy looking ATST that's been built out of the remains of another one, and this is really my sort of prototype go at making this customized version. Now that I've done it and I see how good it looks, I'm definitely going to be doing others, because as you can see I have a couple of other very battered and broken ATSTs here that are desperate for some modifications. The actual process wasn't as hard as I'd expected. We've just got to drill some holes into the front of the ATST and then make some little panels just out of some 1mm styrene sheets. At the moment you can see I have the open eye version of the panels in place, but with a very simple process I can pop those out and replace them with the closed versions, and as you can see it now looks much more like an original ATST, although the eye flaps are now slightly raised. But it does give me both options depending on what I want to do with this toy. But for me, I think the open eye version does look so much better. It may be in the end I actually glue these little eye flaps in place rather than having them as detachable pieces. But for now, I think this project is done. I do want to come back to the ATST in future. As I mentioned, it would be quite nice to put some lights inside it, but if you have other ideas, then leave some comments below with what those are, and I will come back to this project in future. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed it and want to help me out here at toy-polloi, then why not think about becoming a patron of the channel. You get early access to all of my restoration videos, plus access to an exclusive video series called On the Cutting Mat, where I show projects and restorations that you won't see anywhere else. So have a think about that, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.